In this series of videos, I will be doing the Q&A all about Etsy. In this series of videos, I will be taking it from the morning show, from the topic of the morning, whether it be the Q&As of my morning shows for those who cannot make it. And this way here, you will still be able to enjoy the contents, but without all the things that I do in the morning show. And so I hope you enjoy this. And also, don't forget, you can ask those questions that you may be thinking about when you're going to want to take that plunge or take that step and you haven't done it yet for a particular platform. That's what we're here for, so come on in and enjoy the show. If this is your first time tripping over my channel, I want to thank you so much for coming by. And also, if you've been returning, I want to thank you for your continuing support to the channel. I would like you to do me a big favor. Right below this video, that word subscribe, make sure you subscribe to the channel, especially if you like the content. And also, after you do that, make sure right next to it there's the notifications. Make sure you hit all three, because the very top one is where you get all your notifications at. Then also hit me the thumbs up. That does help the channel. But most importantly, give me those comments below, because guess what? That helps the channel, but it also helps me interact with you, because I do answer each and every one of those comments. All right, y'all. So here we go with the Q&A all about Etsy. And I'm going to bring on none other than DzinesLaura. Good morning. Oh, by the way, all her information is in the description bar below. If I need more information, I'll definitely double check with her to make sure we get all her information in the description of the channel for this video and every Friday. So Laura, tell her about a little bit about yourself, because I know you just recently started putting out some videos. And so talk a little bit about your channel and anything you have coming up for you to let everybody know.
Okay, well, the lighting here is really bad today, you guys. I'm sorry. It's a very cloudy day, and it is what it is. I did start my business, DzinesLaura, in 1993 by my first in-person craft show. I made my first online sale in 2012, and I made my first YouTube sale just this month. So I don't really consider myself a YouTuber, even though I love the platform. I love really all the people I've met here. So it's kind of the beginning of that for me. Yeah.
And one of the things I have to say is, one day she was in the chat and said, I haven't did a video yet. And one of the things I do have to say is, when Laura decided to do it, she just went out and did it. And her and I had a conversation about that. And, you know, a lot of times that's how you learn from your mistakes, is by just doing them. So I have several people reaching out to me about Etsy. So that's why today we wanted to go to make this a Q&A all about Etsy. Hello, Bama. How are you doing, John? Good to see you. For those who have questions about Etsy, please make sure in the chat you write either a big Q question, all in caps, or you just put the word Q and then my name, either way, so I can see it, because I'm trying to keep up with the chat. So far, so good. And I'll keep putting a star by your name so I don't miss your question and or statement about Etsy. So today is basically all about Q&A, all about Etsy. So first of all, what got you started doing Etsy over any other platform? And I'm going to switch this.
Sure. There is a story behind it. Probably about 2010, a lot of other crafters, you know how we talk to each other when you're at a show, would say, oh, do you have an Etsy? You know, Etsy was not a household name at that time. So I was curious. I went online, and because I'm very specific in what I make. It's all from spoons. So I started to search how many spoon rings, how many spoon bracelets were on there. And the number was so astronomical that I thought I'll never be found. It was discouraging. So I didn't do anything with it until in 2012. There's a learning point here too. I decided to do, I went on eBay to search, and I searched spoon ring, and then I sorted by highest price. And there was a spoon ring on there selling for $400, $399, $399. It was a Little Red Riding Hood spoon that had been turned into a ring. It became famous because an actress who was very relevant at the time, was photographed wearing that spoon ring. So I then found the spoon for $100. And I thought, okay, here's how I can be found on Etsy. I have something where there's a demand at a price I know I can profit from. And I lost my train of thought, guys. So I'm very nervous.
You're good. You're doing fine. But you're talking about the ring that you
So
found.
I went ahead and purchased that spoon for $100, which I've never done before. I mean, that is, usually a spoon is $5 or less. And then when I was making it, it turned out fantastic. I was able to get at least decent pictures up enough. I opened an Etsy shop and listed that all on the same day. Within 3 days, there was a lady message. Now I was able to be found because there was only like 3 or 4 listed, and people were looking for this. So that was the key really to my beginning success, was able to find, like I heard someone mention they have good vintage. Good vintage might be a good way to start. Within 3 days, I sold that, and for $299.
Wow.
I was definitely hooked. And I decided that I was going to start looking for patterns that were really extra special, not just your average pattern. So I did. And actually the listings that I started with, I still have that listing as a replenishable over and over and over. So I think that was lucky. A little bit of knowledge and a lot of luck got me a good start.
So with Etsy, and for those who may not know, what is the basics about Etsy that you can list when it comes to the Etsy platform?
All right. Etsy is known for handmade, vintage, which they define vintage as 20 years or older, and supplies. The handmade item has to be made by the shop owner. You cannot go thrift a handmade item and then sell that on Etsy. You can have shop members that help in the process, but really the owner has to be the one making it. Since I started though, they did add this platform of you can design it and use an outside production partner, and you do have to list who your production partner is. There's a lot of rules and regulations regarding production partners. Vintage, 20 years or older, you do need to, I don't think Etsy really pays, they don't have the time or the staff to police everything in the vintage category, but they will occasionally reach out and ask you to verify that it is actually vintage. And one of the interesting things I read in the seller handbook was saying that I inherited something from someone who's been deceased for more than 20 years. They don't accept that as a legitimate answer for defining vintage, even though to me that seems pretty definitive, but they don't. And then in the handmade or in the supply category, it has to be inherently purposed as a supply. You can't sell even though it's there, according to their definition of a supply. If you put up denim jeans that are 5 years old, it wasn't inherently meant to be a supply, even though some people use jeans to make handbags, or they use the pockets to make little purses and stuff. It's not considered a supply, and neither is a blank sweatshirt, but they're all over the place. So also, the other thing that people get confused with about what can be sold is when there's overlap. Let's say I handmade something, but I used a handmade supply, and I put those two things together. I can't list it unless I have to use a production partner. The person that handmade that supply, I have to list them in my store. If something is a vintage supply, there's overlap there, so you have to be careful about which category you list it in on Etsy. So that's the basics on what can be. They do have a prohibited list. And I think that's one of the links I gave you, Johnny, was the prohibited list.
Yeah, the one in that email you sent me? Yeah.
There's a prohibited list. And then every once in a while, they'll do a sweep. I know a couple years ago, a lot of people listing vintage clothing. For some reason, it was being taken down, and we never really understood why. I didn't follow up because I don't sell vintage clothing. But those things happen. Also, Etsy has what they call IP infractions, intellectual property. You cannot sell somebody else's intellectual property. They don't take it down. They wait for, like, let's say you have a Disney, let's say you went and bought some Disney material and made a t-shirt out of Disney. You can't sell that on Etsy. Yeah, you can't, because that material has to be for your personal use. What will happen is Disney will come in and they do what they call a sweep. Their agents, Disney agents, will come in and they will flag listings. They fill out the report and send it to Etsy. Then Etsy takes that listing down and you have strike one. Unless you can come back and say, no, Disney gave me permission to do this. Once you get 3 strikes, you're permanently out. And any shop, like let's say you're a wife and husband team, if the wife does an infraction, they will also take the husband's shop down, or any other shop that's associated with that shop. You're permanently done. They will not let you open a shop ever. So it is kind of important, if you want to have a career on Etsy, to pay attention to what you can and cannot list.
One of the things I have to say, since I've been on Etsy, I've noticed that when you go to list something, what I like, I wish all the platforms would do this, is where if something is not eligible to be listed, they will tell you. They won't even let you proceed through it. And that's what I like about Etsy. So you were talking in reference earlier about the prohibited. So is that the same as their way of doing a Vero?
It's similar, but I know on eBay, sometimes I looked at their Vero list. Aren't they very specific about, like, a brand name, like a Nike or something like that? I have not been able to.
Companies, but they're not really too specific on what and why you can't list certain things. But there is a list of company names.
Yeah. Etsy doesn't have that. That's why when there was that sweep, the clothing was all vintage, but it was things that were high-end designer, like Dion von Furstenberg, and those dresses were being taken down, or things by Chanel, and no one could understand, because it was legit vintage, and it wasn't borderline 20 years. It was legit vintage, and they just went through and they took it down. To be honest, I didn't follow up how that all ended. If Etsy does take something down, do not relist it. Do not sell similar. When they sometimes mistakes happen, so maybe when they sort that all out, I've heard that they will go ahead and restore your listing for you. Another thing with the listing, Etsy does have an upfront fee that's 20 cents per listing, and that is not refundable. Even if they take your listing down, they do not. The 20 cents is non-refundable. So.
All right, we do have a question from Peddling Profits. What do you think of the star seller? Can you explain that to others?
Absolutely. This is a question I was anticipating, that and fees. The star seller program is relatively new, so I don't know more about it than anybody else who's been on Etsy since it started. So, when there's a policy change, it's kind of an equalizer in how much you understand Etsy. There are 3 parts to the star seller program. And to be very honest, I'm happy with 2 parts. My feelings on the 3rd part, I really don't care for at all, to answer that part. Now, the 3 components are your shipping time with tracking, your feedback, and how fast you answer questions. As a seller, you are completely in control of your shipping and tracking time. You're completely in control of how fast you answer messages. You are not in control of the feedback portion, but that's the part I'm unhappy with. Etsy makes it very, very difficult for customers who are using their phone or the app to purchase to see the item's description. I get bad feedback because the person did not read the description. I even get good feedback, 5 stars, but they mentioned that they didn't understand what they were buying. And it's right there in the description. So that's the part that really upsets me. And Etsy's feedback, they don't take feedback down liberally like eBay does. If you call and say, hey, my description says this to eBay, and eBay agrees with you, they will take that feedback down. Etsy does not. They have a very specific criteria of when they will take the feedback down. And that part, I need to look up the exact wordage before I answer and about the feedback. Now, the shipping time with tracking, I like it because Etsy does not have the best reputation when it comes to shop owners shipping on time. So for me, when I'm getting ready to purchase from somebody, I can see that this person ships on time and that they use tracking. So I personally like it. They do have a glitch. There is a glitch right now where if you have a 2-day processing time and you ship on the second day, sometimes it doesn't update right away. The next day you will go in and you'll see that your 100% score has been lowered. It does update after 24 hours. But if you're on the end of the month where they're getting ready to evaluate you, and you shipped a whole bunch of packages on a Tuesday because there was a Monday holiday, it is possible for your score to be lowered to that below the 95% standard. And then you get to have a lovely conversation and try to convince them to evaluate you after that update. Now, when it comes to answering messages, there's a lot of people who don't like this one, but I do. Etsy wants you to answer messages within 24 hours, 7 days a week. It doesn't matter if it's Christmas Eve and you have a big party. It doesn't matter. You can set up an automatic reply. So if someone messaged you and you're taking a couple days off, there's an automatic reply. The automatic reply will count as you replying within 24 hours. But Etsy has a bad reputation for shop owners not answering messages ever sometimes. So if you get, and while we're on messages, so let's see, did I answer that question fully? The 3 parts, how I feel about it?
Yeah.
Okay. Messages.
Before you go any further, because it was about the cost, Jennifer says it's every 4 months. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
The list. Yep. The listing fee. I broke down all the fees too, because that's another question that comes up with people who are new to selling on Etsy. It's very different than how eBay does it. The 20-cent listing is for 4 months. If the item does not sell after 4 months, it'll go into your expired. It'll go into your expired folder. You can relist it for another 20 cents. Yes.
Okay. They said Pam says that they are mimicking eBay for eBay feedback because Etsy hired a person that used to work for eBay on feedback.
I wish they would mimic eBay. I wish that they would be a little more seller friendly in what feedback they will take down. Because I've had actually people say absolutely factually wrong things in the feedback, and Etsy will not take it down.
Veronica says Etsy sounds more like a high maintenance by the minute. I don't really do a lot of high maintenance on my Etsy store. What about you?
I don't now because I'm pretty much in the groove of it. When I first started, I did not know how to use tags. I didn't understand their search engine optimization, SEO. So I had listed maybe like 25 things, and I did have to go back in and then rework every single listing. I think it's a good idea if you're going to list if you're getting ready to list, I would list 1 or 2 things. And maybe have somebody look at it before you do a sell similar over and over and over. Locally, a lady asked me to help her get started on Etsy. She only sold women's scarves. I said, after you list 1, please send me a link. I will look at it. She listed 100 of them, and anywhere in a tag or a title did she put the words women's scarf. She used every other way to describe the thing, but she did not use the words women's scarf. And she did sell similar on every single one, and she had to go back and edit every listing. So
wow.
It's a good idea to have someone look at it.
All right, and Glamos has a question. Could you please tell us what's the benefits of selling on Etsy versus other platforms?
There is a consensus out there that on Etsy you can get more for vintage, higher price for vintage, but the fees are higher. So I'm not sure how that evens out. The benefit with the handmade is Etsy is known for handmade. That's a hard question. You're going to have, let's see, because I'm actually favoring eBay right now, but there used to be, back in the day, there was a huge benefit because Etsy was known for handmade. It was special, but now it's so clogged up with infractions and a lot of cheap overseas items. That's a really, if something else pops in my head about what's the benefit other than maybe getting more eyes on it, I'll let you know, Glamorous.
Well, I have to agree with you on that, because for me, when I list something on Etsy, I just put it on there because of the fact that, one, I can get more on there than I would either on Mercari or eBay.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it's because of the previous that sold, because you still can see what's sold like you would on eBay. But a lot of times it's more, you get more traction over there than you would on eBay and or Mercari.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question is, feeling on Etsy's advertisements, can you explain the 15% fees and the 12% fees?
Yes, absolutely. And you said feelings. I hate it. I loved the advertising they had prior, but what's going on now is advertising, my feeling is, should be voluntary. I'm one of the shops who had made more than $10,000 in a calendar year. They have their off-site ads where if you made $10,000 in any calendar year, you are forced. There is no way to get out of the outside ads. And they charge 12% on the entire amount. Okay, so for me, the 12% is because I'm forced in. If you voluntarily opt in, that's the 15%. So that's the difference. Forced in, 12%, opt in, 15%. They charge the 12% on the entire amount of your purchase. I just had one where I sold an item for $25. I charged $4.50 for shipping. There was sales tax because Etsy collects the sales tax. Okay, so I was charged 12% on the entire amount, which was plus the tax. It was way over the $29.50 plus their tax. So I actually ended up paying closer to 15% in the advertising. If you're opting in at 15%, you're going to pay more like 18%. That is something I am forced to pay for the life of my shop. And you add that, I have to add that 15% to the 6.5% the transaction fee. They also have a processing fee of 3% plus 25 cents. And I had to pay the 20 cents to list it. That sale, where I sold a $25 item, I ended up with $18.53 plus the cost of goods. And then I have to pay taxes to the IRS on that. It ended up being more than a third. So that's the whole thing with the fees on Etsy are higher. So I think that might be part of the reason why people are getting more money. The buyer on Etsy is different. They're expecting an experience, where on eBay, they just want to get their item and they just want a smooth transaction. And Etsy, they want an experience.
Pam says that she does her listings where she does everything manually to relist it, because that way she can renew, instead of renewing it automatically, she can actually go through the listing herself.
Yes.
Patrick saying he thinks his rock might even do better on Etsy. That could do. Please don't take this question seriously. I know what rock you're talking about, Patrick. Roy says he had an ETS. Is that the reason that Etsy prices seem to go up higher on items?
Yes. And to be very transparent, my prices on Etsy are higher. I don't direct any of my traffic to my Etsy shop. I direct my traffic to my personal website because the prices are lower. That same ring that I sold for $25 is listed for $18 on my website. $18. And the only fee I pay on my website is the PayPal transaction fee.
Peddling Profit says we have never ran into any scammers or low offering on Etsy. The buyers are awesome, and that I have to agree. All right, Glamos has a closet. She has a question in reference to I missed the earlier post. part, does Etsy have any restrictions on what brands you can sell? I just dropped the prohibited list in the chat that she given me to share with y'all. But go ahead and cover that question, please.
I think that's a great question because I know that eBay has their Vero list where they specifically list the brands. I looked and read through Etsy's prohibited list. They do not list any brands specifically. They do define vintage as 20 years or older, but there was a sweep a couple of years, could even been a year ago. And I only found out because I go in and read Etsy forums where a lot of people selling legit vintage high-end items were having their listings were being taken down. Chanel, Diane von Furstenberg was obviously it's vintage, but they were being taken down. And to be honest, because I don't sell vintage clothing, I never really followed through to see how that, if it was a mistake, because Etsy makes mistakes and then they will restore the listing. But I really, if there is a brand specific list, they don't publish it.
All right. Peddling Profits would like to know, can you explain the importance of tags, titles, having videos, free shipping, anything that will get you on that first page without promoting your listings? They do videos now on Etsy?
Yes. Leave that up, Johnny. Can you leave that up so I can answer all parts of that? Because there's a lot there to unpack. Okay. The importance of tags and titles, that's your SEO, search engine optimization. When your title matches your tags, you will be given relevancy. Etsy's search is based on relevancy and is also based on listing quality, and they use AI, artificial intelligence. So when I make a title for my item, the first words are the most important. I will either use, and I'm sorry to be so specific, but it's a good example. When I do a spoon ring, the pattern name is April and there's a year 1950. So I will either put April 1950 spoon ring as my first 4 words, or I will vary it by saying spoon ring April 1950. The words following it are things that describe my ring. What sizes is available. I will put what flower it is, muslin flower. Then I take my title, I copy it, I paste it into a Word document. Tags can be 20 letters or less and no punctuation. So I will divide my title up into 20 character or less tags. Like I will say April 1950, comma, spoon ring, comma. The comma, then once you get your commas in that, copy it from your Word document with the commas, paste it into the tag. The commas will divide that up into your tags. That's how because now your title matches your tags and you will have relevancy. If you start putting things in your tags that have nothing to do with your item, it will drop your relevancy score. Okay, hopefully, if you still have questions about tags and titles, ask me again. Videos. I started doing videos. No sound is allowed. So even though on my eBay videos, I will talk to the person. I tell them what it is. But I noticed that on Etsy, the sound does not go through, which is fine. In my mind, I don't know factually for sure if it helps. In my mind, it does. I think the buyer can see it better. I use a turntable and I put the piece of jewelry on the turntable and I let it turn for about 15 seconds so they can see it from every angle. Sometimes my videos are clearer than the pictures. Etsy says that sales convert at a higher rate when there's a video. So I'm actually enjoying making the videos. How do I feel about free shipping? Shipping is not free. Shipping is included. I don't do free shipping on Etsy because every time I try free shipping on Etsy, I get that person who, again, does not read the description. And in their mind, free shipping means free returns. And I've had people push that buy button without reading a thing, and then they want to return it. And I also have no returns unless I make a mistake or unless you approach me in a kind way. Because I've had some upset customers who will not read anything and they figure they can just return it and get all of their money back. And on a handmade item, I can't resell that again. I don't do free shipping. When I do free shipping, the times I've done it, and I've done it several times, to really accurately tell you, it doesn't help. It didn't help me. Customers know it's not free. Anything that will get you on the first page without promoting your listing. Okay, so, and I don't promote my listings. There's another advertising. We already discussed the offsite ads that I'm forced into. So that doesn't help me on Etsy because that's off of Etsy. The offsite that you're forced into are ads. I've even seen my ads on YouTube. They're off of Etsy. The advertising that is on Etsy, anybody can opt in right from the beginning and you can opt out. The reason I don't use it is because we don't have full control over the cost per click. And there's a lot to unpack with the advertising, but I'll try to just stick to your point. You can set up a daily budget. Let's say you want to spend $5 a day. That part you're in control of. The part, unless they've changed this recently, I apologize, but the way it's been is you don't have any control over how much, like one click can be $4. One click, if you're selling a sterling silver spoon ring, one click can be $4 and your budget is destroyed. You pay for that even if they don't purchase. So that money is gone. So I don't do it. Once they took away the control, I used to go with a $10 daily budget, and I had maybe 20 cents a click. And I did very well under that system.
All right.
How to get on the first page really has to do with relevancy, and do you have a history of following the rules? They have a community score. If you're very unkind in the forums, it counts against you. There's a lot that goes into the relevancy to get on the first page.